No one told you this, but I will. If you have to convince her to like you, if you have to talk louder, buy more, text more, beg for her time, you've already lost. Because real attraction, it's silent. It's in how you walk. It's in the way the room shifts when you enter. Not because you asked, but because you exist. This video is not for the nice guy. It's not for the people pleaser or the moralist waiting for approval. This is for the man who's done chasing and ready to become the one they chase. Let me show you the 7 brutal, undeniable signs you are, or could become, a man they'll never forget. Most men think being attractive means having 6-pack abs, a full head of hair, and a bank account that flexes harder than their biceps. But that's not power. That's decoration. A highly attractive man doesn't chase attention. He commands it. He walks into a room and alters its temperature. Not because he wants to be noticed, but because his presence is undeniable. And yet, this type of man is rare. Because becoming him requires you to understand something most people never will. Attraction is not about being liked. It's about being respected, even feared. Look at Caesar, a man who seduced Cleopatra not just with charm, but with the raw gravity of his ambition. He wasn't trying to be desirable. He was trying to conquer the known world, and that's exactly why he was desired. Power, focus, audacity, these are the foundations of masculine allure, not smiles and compliments. The first sign that you are a truly attractive man is these. You do not need validation. Not from women, not from men, not even from the mirror. You see, when a man seeks approval, he immediately places himself beneath the people he wants approval from. He becomes predictable. And predictability is poison to power. Women might find him sweet. Bosses might find him agreeable. But no one finds him irresistible. No one feels the gravitational pull of his independence. Why? Because he's orbiting them. Now think about someone like Miyamoto Musashi, the undefeated samurai who wrote the Book of 5 Rings. Musashi didn't chase applause. He didn't ask others how to live. He decided his own rhythm, his own code, and he sharpened his spirit like a blade. That's real magnetism, the kind you don't advertise, the kind that's felt in silence. Let me ask you this. When was the last time you walked away from someone who disrespected your standards? Without explaining, without apologizing, without chasing closure. Because if you can't do that, then you are still trapped in the prison of needing to be understood. Highly attractive men do not seek to be understood. They seek to be effective. Their time is expensive. Their attention is scarce. Their energy is curated. They live with an almost arrogant sense of purpose. Not because they think they're better than everyone else, but because they know that most people are sleepwalking through life. Here's the second layer of that aurag silence. Not emptiness, but controlled silence. Jung once said, people will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own souls. A truly attractive man has already faced his. That's why he doesn't overtalk. That's why he doesn't fill the void with noise. His silence isn't passive. It's deliberate. It unsettles the insecure. It challenges the shallow. It forces people to confront themselves. You ever notice how people squirm when they can't read you? That's power. When they can't predict your reactions. When they don't know if you're impressed, offended, intrigued, or bored. A man who is unreadable becomes uncontrollable. And in a world obsessed with control, that's irresistible. Now look at Kissinger. Not exactly a model for romantic attraction, but let's be honest, power attracts. He moved entire nations with quiet manipulation, strategic ambiguity, and cold-eyed realism. He didn't need people to love him. He needed them to listen. And they did. Because he understood one core long perception is power. You don't need to be loud to be powerful. You just need to be heard at the right time, by the right people, in the right way. And that leads to the next sign you know when to vanish. A highly attractive man is not always available. Not because he's playing games, but because he's building something. He disappears into his mission. He says no to things that others would beg for. And that absence, that refusal to dance to everyone else's tune, it breeds curiosity, it breeds obsession. Let me be brutal here, Ig. If you're always texting her back immediately, always showing up when she calls, always giving more than you receive, you are teaching her that you are optional, that you have nothing better to do, that your time, your presence, your spirit is cheap. But the man who walks away at the peak of attention, the one who doesn't flinch when people try to make him prove himself, that man becomes myth. Napoleon said, "If you want a thing done well, do it yourself." But what he didn't say is this: when you rely on yourself, people begin to rely on you, not because you asked, but because you became the axis around which things move. This is the paradox of attraction. People chase what doesn't chase them back. People value what doesn't need them. And here's where we bring it to the modern world. Think of the man who walks into a corporate boardroom and doesn't over-explain his ideas. He doesn't try to win everyone over. He states his case. He listens carefully. And when he speaks, he doesn't fill the room with filler words. He doesn't say "just" or "I think." He speaks like a man who has already built something. And if you don't get it, that's your loss. People like that don't climb ladders. They build their own platforms. In dating, the same law applies. The highly attractive man is not reactive. He doesn't panic when she pulls away. He doesn't cling when things get uncertain. Because deep down, he knows. He's the prize. He's the mountain, not the climber. He is the scarcity. Now let's break the delusion. You will never become that man if you keep outsourcing your self-worth to society's definition of value, because what they call confidence is often just arrogance. What they call kindness is often just cowardice, and what they call morality is often just obedience. Nietzsche warned us morality is the herd instinct in the individual. Most men are still trapped in that herd. They think following the rules will earn them love. They think being nice will earn them loyalty. But let me ask you, has it? Have all your compromises made you stronger? Or just more digestible? The highly attractive man is not digestible. He is not convenient. He is not user-friendly. He is disruptive. Not because he tries to be, but because he refuses to shrink. He has standards that offend people. He has routines that make others uncomfortable. He has dreams that seem selfish. But guess what? That's exactly why he's magnetic. He is the kind of man people resent until they need him. Fear until they follow him. Ignore until they can't. So here's the uncomfortable truth. If you've ever been called intimidating good, if you've ever been told you think too deeply, act too independently, or talk too little bit excellent, if you've ever felt like you're from another planet because you don't care about gossip, status, or cheap dopamine perfect, because all of these things are symptoms of a rare man, the kind of man this world doesn't know how to deal with, and that's exactly why it can't stop watching. You want to know who terrifies people? It's not the loud, angry man. It's not the guy pounding his chest, making threats, and demanding attention. No, it's the man who stays calm when others lose their minds. The one who doesn't need to raise his voice. The one who doesn't flinch under pressure. The one who can hear an insult, smile slightly, and respond with nothing but silence or precision. That's the second sign you are a highly attractive man. You are composed under chaos. You don't just stay calm. You become calmer the more intense the moment becomes. Carl Jung said, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. Because once you've done that, once you've explored your own shadow, confronted your own darkness, accepted every flaw, every failure, every brutal truth about yourself, there is nothing left for the world to threaten you with. You cannot be manipulated. You cannot be panicked. You cannot be baited into reactions. You don't need to defend your ego. because your ego doesn't control you anymore. That kind of man is rare, because most men are still performing for women, performing for their fathers, performing for some vague idea of success that was fed to them by a system that wants them obedient and insecure. But the man who has stopped performing, the man who doesn't fear being alone, doesn't fear being misunderstood, doesn't fear walking away from what insults his spirit, that man is not just attractive, he is dangerous, because he cannot be used. Look at Musashi. This was a man who fought over 60 duels and never lost. But it wasn't brute strength that made him deadly. It was his calm, his ability to wait, to read his opponent, to move with clarity when others were distracted by emotion. He said, "Perception is strong, sight is weak," meaning most people are blind. They react to what they see, but they don't perceive what's really going on. You want to be attractive? Stop reacting. Start observing. Start perceiving. In today's world, everyone's talking. Everyone's triggered. Everyone's offended by something. You want to stand out. Be the man who listens more than he speaks. Be the man who chooses his words like a weapon. Be the man who can sit in the storm and see clearly while others are blinded by the rain. That kind of composure is rare. But when people feel it, they remember it. You walk into a room and you don't need to say much. They feel your energy. It's not loud, it's not aggressive, but it's heavy, weighted, grounded. Like you've already fought battles they can't imagine. Like you've already belled for something you believe in. And now, you're not trying to prove anything. You're just watching, measuring, waiting. That is the posture of a man who attracts without effort. But there's more. There's a third sign, a deeper one. And it's this: you know how to walk away from pleasure. Most men don't. They think being attractive is about having access to women, to sex, to social approval. But what they don't realize is that access becomes addiction. And addiction kills respect. A man who chases pleasure becomes a puppet to it. And once you're a puppet, it shows in your eyes, in your posture, in the weakness of your choices. Because your hunger controls you. But the man who can stare pleasure in the face and decline it, the man who can say no to instant gratification, not out of fear or guilt, but out of self-respect, that man radiates power. Friedrich Nietzsche warned us about this. He said, "He who cannot obey himself will be commanded." You understand what that means. It means if you can't master your own desires, someone else will. Whether it's a woman, a boss, a company, or a government. They will all use your weakness against you. Highly attractive men do not drown in pleasure. They flirt with it. Then they walk away. Because their joy doesn't come from indulgence. It comes from mastery. You ever notice how the most magnetic men in history weren't the ones indulging in every vice? They were the ones who chose their vices deliberately, strategically, like Caesar, who knew how to feast, but also knew when to fast, who knew how to seduce, but also knew when to wage war. Balance, my friend, not because it's moral, but because it's powerful. The man who says no to things other men worship, he becomes a symbol. In the modern world, you see it clearly. Men addicted to attention, addicted to porn, addicted to validation from strangers online. You think anyone respects that? You think anyone sees that man and says, "Now there's someone I'd follow into battle"? No. They see a beggar in a nice shirt. But the man who can disappear from the crowd, who doesn't need to post every thought, every achievement, every flex, that man becomes a mystery. And mystery creates value. So here's the real testing. Can you delay gratification? Can you train in silence for years while no one claps, no one sees, no one validates you? Because that's what Caesar did before he became Caesar. That's what Napoleon did in Corsica. Grinding, studying, planning, while the world ignored him. And then one day they moved, and the world never forgot them. Attractiveness is not about being seen all the time. It's about being remembered when you choose to appear. which leads to the next layer, your reputation. You see, the highly attractive man doesn't just build a personality, he builds a myth. People don't just know who he is, they whisper about him. They wonder what he's doing, who he's with, what he's planning. Because he's not accessible. He's not too available. He's not predictable. That's the art of mystique. In corporate life, this shows up as the man who doesn't join every meeting. But when he speaks, others shut up, not because of his title, but because of his energy. In social life, it's the man who isn't at every party, but whose name comes up in every conversation. In dating, it's the man who doesn't message too much, doesn't try too hard. But when he enters the room, all eyes shift toward him, even if they pretend not to. This isn't about manipulation. This is about understanding human psychology. When something is rare, it becomes valuable. And when something is scarce and disciplined, it becomes legendary. But most men fear being forgotten. That's why they overshare, overreach, overcompensate. They fear disappearing, because they've never built an identity they can live with alone. But the attractive man, the real one, he's already comfortable in solitude. That's another sign. Solitude doesn't scare you, it sharpens you. You're not texting people out of boredom. You're not trying to fill every minute with noise. You've realized something the masses haven't. Most people are too broken to be worth constant company. That's not arrogance. That's realism. You have to be alone to become someone worth being around. You have to cut yourself off from the noise to build signal. Most of the world lives in echo chambers of mediocrity. They don't even know it. They think community means validation. But all it means is that they're surrounded by others just as lost. But the man who detaches reflects, builds. He reemerges with a presence that cuts through the fog. He doesn't need to convince anyone of who he is. He just is. Musashi didn't need a crowd. He needed a sword, a strategy, and silence. Jung didn't need popularity. He needed depth, solitude, and brutal honesty. Nietzsche didn't need applause. He needed suffering, thinking, and truth. That's the cost of becoming attractive in the deepest sense. Not Instagram likes attractive, not magazine cover attractive, but soul level attractive. And when you become that man, the right people will find you. They'll orbit you. Not because you begged them to, but because your gravity doesn't give them a choice. So ask yourself, what kind of gravity do you have? Does your presence calm people or agitate them? Do your words carry weight? Or do they dissolve like fog? Do you leave a mark when you leave a room? Or are you just another echo? Because in a world addicted to stimulation, silence is power. And in a society obsessed with approval, indifference is seduction. They think being attractive is about looking good, wearing the right cologne, dressing in designer clothes, having perfect skin and a symmetrical jawline. And sure, those things help for a moment. They catch the eye, but they don't hold it. Because what really makes a man attractive isn't visible to the naked eye. It's not in how he looks, it's in how he sees. The second sign, you are a highly attractive man, you do not seek approval. Not from your friends, not from women, not even from your father's ghost. Because the truth is, most men live as if someone else is watching. As if there's some invisible judge with a scorecard measuring every move they make. Their job title, their car, their girlfriend's looks, their social media following, their opinions, even their damn hobbies. They're not living, they're auditioning. But the attractive man, the real kind, not the kind sold to you by perfume commercials, is not performing. He's decided who he is. Not based on what others value, but based on what he values. That's what makes him powerful. That's what makes him magnetic. People can feel when you're not chasing them. And ironically, that's when they start chasing you. Think about it. You ever seen a man walk into a room and immediately control the atmosphere without trying? He doesn't have to dominate anyone. He's not loud. He's not needy. He's not smiling too much or trying to be liked. He just walks in, and people adjust. Because energy doesn't lie, and energy, real masculine energy, is quiet-rooted, indifferent to outside approval. It says, I'm not here to be liked. I'm here because I choose to be. Now let me tell you something uncomfortably. Most men are terrified of being disliked. They want to be agreeable. They want to be polite. They want to avoid conflict. They say, yes, too much. They apologize for existing. They act like their opinions are dangerous. And the worst part, they think that makes them good. But Carl Jung said, a man who is not dangerous is not a good man. He is a weak man. Read that again. People don't respect weakness disguised as virtue. They use it. They manipulate it. And then they throw it away. You want to be truly attractive. Start saying what you really think. Stop explaining yourself. And when someone disrespects your boundary, don't argue. Just enforce it. Because the attractive man isn't obsessed with being understood. He's obsessed with being sovereign. And you know what happens when a man becomes sovereign? Women lean in. Men pay attention. Opportunities find him, not because he's shouting, but because in a world of noise, his silence is deafening. Look at Napoleon. He didn't walk into rooms begging for approval. He walked in knowing exactly what he was after, and people sensed it. He had a calm ruthlessness about him. He could charm you and conquer you in the same breath. He understood the third sign of attractioning decisiveness. A man who knows what he wants and acts on it. Is Thames more attractive than a man who's smarter, richer, or better looking? Because most people are stuck in hesitation, paralysis. They're addicted to options. They need permission. They think too much. They feel too much. They second-guess every step. And that energy, it repels. But the decisive man, he moves, he chooses, he acts, and that creates gravity. It doesn't matter if he makes mistakes, because he owns them. It doesn't matter if people disagree, because he doesn't need them to agree. What matters is that he's moving towards something, and that clarity is rare. Do you know how refreshing it is, in this age of indecision and doubt, to meet a man who simply knows what he's doing? He doesn't ask for consensus. He doesn't explain every choice. He says, this is the plan. And he sticks to it, not out of arrogance, out of alignment. And when that energy enters the room, people adjust. They follow, they submit, even if they pretend not to, even if they roll their eyes, because deep down, everyone is starving for leadership. You want to be attractive. Learn how to lead, not with force, not with titles, but with presence. Lead with your eyes, with your tone, with your body language, with your decisiveness. Because leadership is not about control, it's about direction. And people can feel when a man is going somewhere important, even if they don't know where. Now let's talk about restraint. This is the part no one teaches you. Highly attractive men are restrained, not because they're weak, but because they're selective. They don't waste energy. They don't give their time to everyone. They don't chase. They don't beg. Don't overshare. They don't respond instantly. They don't try to prove their value, because they already know their value. A man who knows his value doesn't overexpose himself. He doesn't broadcast his life. He doesn't try to impress. He withholds, not to manipulate, but because mystery is more powerful than exposure. Let me say that again, mystery is more powerful than exposure. You want to become magnetic? Say less. Do less. Reveal less. Let people wonder. Let them fill in the blanks. Because human psychology is simply, we value what we can't fully grasp. The second you become too obvious, too eager, too available, you become ordinary. Attractive men are rare, and rarity requires discipline. Nietzsche said, the higher we soar, the smaller we appear to those who cannot fly. That's the price. The more attractive you become, the more misunderstood you'll be, the more hated, the more resented. Because you're stepping out of the herd. You're not complying. You're not explaining. You're not playing the social game. and the world punishes that. But here's the paradox, it also secretly desires it. The man who cannot be controlled becomes the man everyone wants near them. Women want to be chosen by him. Men want to be mentored by him, or destroy him. Because when you radiate sovereignty, you become a mirror. You reflect back to people what they're not. And most people hate mirrors. But the ones who don't, the ones who are ready, they'll be drawn to you like moths to flame. So you have to ask yourself, do you want to be loved by everyone? Or do you want to be respected by the few who matter? Because you can't have both. The man who tries to be loved by all becomes a clown. But the man who dares to walk his own path, no matter how lonely, no matter how judged, he becomes a king. And that is the fourth sign. You walk alone. Not because you have to, but because you choose to. You are not afraid of solitude, you seek it. Because in solitude, you build, you sharpen, you reflect, you become dangerous. Look at Musashi. He didn't become a legend by surrounding himself with noise. He disappeared. He went into the mountains. He trained. He meditated. He stripped away the unnecessary. And when he came back, he was untouchable. The same is true today. The most attractive men are the most alone. Not because they're unworthy of company, but because they've outgrown it. They don't need crowds. They don't need constant companionship. Because they've found something most men never dog peace within themselves. And once you have that, you become immune to gossip, to criticism, to manipulation, to rejection. Because you are not standing on borrowed confidence. You're standing on a mountain you built yourself. So don't ask yourself how many people like you. Ask yourself, what did I have to sacrifice to like myself? Because that's the price. To become truly attractive. To walk into a room and command respect without saying a word. You must become unavailable to the world that raised you. Unavailable to its lies. Unavailable to its guilt. Unavailable to its mediocrity. Only then will you be seen, not by all, but by the right ones. And that's enough. You've been told to be nice, to be agreeable, to be emotionally available, to communicate, to open up. You've been taught that these things make you attractive, that vulnerability is strength, that you should always be in touch with your feelings. But no one tells you this. Most men who wear their emotions on their sleeves are not seen as strong. They are seen as unstable. Because there's a difference between having depth and being emotionally fragile. The fifth sign, you're a truly attractive man. You regulate your emotions like a disciplined warrior, not a crying child. Because in this world, emotional chaos is weakness, and weakness, no matter how noble it sounds, repels. Let's talk about Caesar. Do you think Caesar cried when his best friend Brutus stabbed him? Maybe, but not in public. Not in the Senate. Not in the arena of power. Because he understood something most men today have forgotten. You don't give your enemies ammunition. You bleed in private. You strategize in silence. You recover in solitude. The world respects men who can endure pressure without cracking. Because when things go wrong, and they will, the man who can stay calm becomes the center of gravity. Everyone else panics. Everyone else loses control. But he remains still. That stillness is seductive. It's not coldness, it's control. In a crisis, women don't want a man who's weeping and spiraling. They want the man who says, "I've got this," and means it. You want to be attractive, learn to suffer silently. Not because you're afraid to feel, but because you own your feelings. They don't own you. Carl Jung said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will rule your life, and you will call it fate." Most men are ruled by emotional forces they don't even understand. They act out, they overact, they sabotage, then they blame the world. But the attractive man doesn't blame. He studies. He watches his rage like a surgeon. He listens to his sadness like a tactician. He uses his pain as information, not identity. That's the difference. Most men use emotion as an excuse. Attractive men use it as leverage. And here's the thing, people can feel it. Even when you're silent, they can sense whether your energy is grounded or erratic. And in a world that's spinning out of control, the man who has mastered himself becomes a sanctuary. But mastery doesn't mean numbness. It means the ability to pause, to not act on impulse, to hold your fire, to channel your storm strategically, like Kissinger in diplomacy or Miyamoto Musashi in battle. They didn't react emotionally. They observed, they adapted, they struck only when it counted. Most of you are burning fuel for nothing, exploding at traffic, arguing online, chasing dopamine. That's not power, that's dependency. But when a man no longer needs to act out, he becomes godlike. Because there's a terrifying beauty in restraint, which brings us to the sixth sign. And this one will offend you. You're dangerous, but controlled. Every attractive man, every truly magnetic man, has teeth, he has edge, he has fire, he can destroy, he can dominate, he can say no, he can walk away, he can end you, if he wanted to. But he doesn't. Not because he can't, but because he chooses not to. That's what makes it powerful. A man who has no capacity for destruction isn't virtuous. He's just harmless, and harmless men are forgettable. But a man who can hurt you, yet doesn't, is unforgettable. He is like fire behind glass. Everyone can feel the heat, but they respect the boundary. Now you might think that's toxic. You've been taught that. Dangerous is bad. That dominance is wrong. That power corrupts. But power doesn't corrupt. It reveals. If you're already broken, power will expose it. But if you've done the inner work, power becomes grace. Think about Friedrich Nietzsche. He didn't write for the weak. He wrote for the ones willing to stare into the abyss and not blink. He believed the highest man is not the moral man, but the willful one, the one who doesn't pretend to be good. He simply chooses not to become evil, because he could. And that's what makes him divine. You see, most men today are neutered, apologetic, desperate to be seen as good boys. They've removed their edge, buried their instincts, traded strength for softness. But the world doesn't trust soft men. Softness is fine, in doses. But if there's no fire under it, people sense it, and they walk away. Because the truth is due, people want to feel safe, but also thrilled. And a man who's both, he becomes magnetic. Women feel it, men feel it. Because the man who's capable of violence, but lives in peace, is the most trustworthy man in the room. He doesn't need to impress you. He's not bluffing. He's not puffing. He knows what he is. And when you know what you are, you stop defending it. That's real confidence. Not the loud kind, not the boastful kind. The kind that radiates from the bones. You've seen it. That guy who says nothing, yet dominates the room. The guy who barely reacts, yet everyone wants to win his attention. That's not because he's hot. That's because he's charged. He carries energy, intent, readiness. He's not performing. He's prepared. Prepared to walk away. Prepared to escalate. Prepared to win, without ever raising his voice. That's the silent attraction of power. It whispers louder than most men scream. And you can't fake it, because it's not in your words. It's in how you move, how you breathe, how you look someone in the eye and say, I see everything, and I fear nothing. You don't get there by reading self-help books. You get there by conquering yourself, by sitting alone with your demons, by confronting your failures, by disciplining your mind, by refusing to betray your standards. The world is full of talkers, men who know the right phrases, the right masculinity, quotes, but when pressure comes, they crumble. But not you, because you've been tested, you've built scar tissue, you've been embarrassed, rejected, mocked, and you didn't fold, you learned. Attraction isn't built in the mirror, it's built in the dark, in the gym at 6 a.m., in the office after hours, in the quiet moments when you keep going, even when no one's watching. That's where men become undeniable. And once you've become undeniable, you stop explaining yourself. You stop chasing. You stop hoping, Because you know they'll find you. The right people always do. So, if you're still begging for validation, still overthinking, still trying to prove your worth, then you're not there yet. And that's okay. But stop lying to yourself. You don't become attractive by being nice. You don't become attractive by saying the right things. You become attractive when you earn your own respect. And let me tell you, there is no feeling more powerful than looking in the mirror and knowing, without flinching, I built this. I built this strength. I built this mind. I built this peace. And no one can take it from me. Not because I'm lucky, not because I'm special, but because I refuse to be weak. That's what people feel. That's what people chase. Not your smile, not your abs, not your income, your aura. And that only comes from depth. You don't need to talk to be attractive. That's the seventh sign. You don't need to perform, convince, explain, or sell yourself. You exist, and that's enough, because your presence speaks before your words ever do. This is the final sign, the rarest, the one that separates men who attract attention from men who attract obsession. It's what the old samurai called killing intent, the aura of someone who is ready even while still, a man who does not need to posture, because his silence is louder than most men's screaming. It's the invisible force that makes people turn when you walk in. It's the unspoken dominance that causes others to instinctively look toward you for permission, for validation, for approval, even if you say nothing. And here's the paradox: to get there, you have to stop trying to get there. Attractiveness is not something you do. It's something you become. And to become it, you must strip away everything that is false. The fake smiles, the people-pleasing, the cheap charisma, the moral posturing. You burn it all, because real power doesn't beg, it radiates. Think of Napoleon, 5'6", slight frame, no Hollywood jawline. But when he walked into a room, even kings felt like ants. Why? Because he wasn't seeking permission. He assumed command. He carried himself with the silent conviction of a man who knew his place in history, even before history had written it. That is the essence of the seventh sign. You believe in your own myth. Not delusion, not arrogance, but a deep, unshakable faith in who you are becoming. Most men are waiting for proof before they believe. Attractive men believe before there is proof. They create the proof, through sheer will. Friedrich Nietzsche once said, "Become who you are." That line offends modern men because it implies that who you are is not yet who you could be. And that gap, that's your burden to close. You aren't attractive just because you're nice, or in shape, or clever with your words. Those things can help. But the most powerful magnetism you can have is the belief that you are inevitable. That sooner or later, the world will bend toward your vision. People can sense it. They don't even know why they're drawn to you. It's not logic. It's instinct. And that instinct says, "This man knows something I don't." Not because you told them, but because your eyes say it. The way you walk says it. The way you do nothing and still shift the energy in the room, that says it. But here's the brutal truth: most men will never accept you can't fake that. Not for long. It must be earned. And the price is heavy. It means solitude. It means failure. It means building when no one cares, practicing when no one watches, and walking alone when everyone else joins the herd. Most men would rather be liked than respected. You'd rather be remembered. You don't need everyone to approve of you. You only need to become undeniable. And you do that not by chasing status, but by embodying standard. This is where the modern man fails. He wants to be seen as attractive without becoming someone worthy of being desired. He wants attention without responsibility. He wants loyalty without offering certainty. But the attractive man, the true attractive man, doesn't play that game, because he doesn't crave shallow admiration. He demands reverence, and that only happens when people realizing you are not like them. Not because you act superior, But because you are operating on a higher plane, your priorities are different. Your time is sacred. Your mind is fortified. You don't gossip. You don't seek petty revenge. You don't need to win every argument. Because you're not playing for validation. You're playing for legacy. That's the aura of the attractive man. He's already in the future. While others are stuck in distraction, you're building. While others are scrolling, complaining, flexing, you are quietly becoming a weapon. And that silence, that focused solitude, it terrifies people. Because it reminds them of what they are not doing. And so they mock you, they doubt you, they try to pull you back down. But deep down, even they know you are ascending. Like Kiza marching across the Rubicon. Like Musashi sharpening his blade alone in the forest. Like Jung studying the collective unconscious when the world mocked his ideas. They weren't trying to be attractive. They were trying to master reality, and that pursuit alone made them magnetic. Because attraction is not about looks, or lines, or money. It's about force. You walk into a room, and everything bends around you. Not because you asked, but because your spirit commands it. But understand this, there is a price to pay. You will be misunderstood. You will be envied. You will be attacked. Because the man who needs nothing becomes the most dangerous man alive. You don't chase women. They orbit you. You don't chase money. It flows toward your structure. You don't chase praise. Your results speak for you. And people will try to explain you, to reduce you, to label you. They'll say you're arrogant, intense, difficult. But deep down, they'll be watching. And more than that, they'll want you. Because you've done what they couldn't, you've become whole. You're not perfect. You don't need to be. You're not always right. You don't pretend to be. But your life is aligned. Your word means something. Your body is disciplined. Your presence is focused. And your soul is untouchable. That is rare. That is attractive. And that is what they'll never forget. There's a moment in every man's life, if he's lucky, when the illusion shatters. He sees the game for what it really is. Not a fair system, not a meritocracy, not a world that rewards virtue, but a jungle where strength is not just physical but psychological, strategic, relentless. And once he sees this, he has two options: go back to sleep or evolve. The highly attractive man is the one who chooses to evolve. He's not born lucky. He's not given special treatment. He simply refuses to accept the identity the world tried to force on him. And that is the final layer. Because attraction is not about adding more. It's about removing the weak parts of you that never belonged. It's about killing the coward, killing the approval seeker, killing the nice guy who bends at every request, who lies to himself to avoid confrontation, who smiles while bleeding. This isn't about becoming cruel. It's about becoming clean, cutting through all the noise, and walking with the clarity of a man who knows exactly who he is, and exactly who he will never be again. You see, most men are pretending to be confident, pretending to be good, pretending to be strong, while silently cracking under the weight of their own passivity. But the attractive man, he's not pretending anymore. He's dangerous because he's real, and realness in a world addicted to masks is terrifying. This is why women gravitate to him, not because he panders to them, but because he doesn't need to. He's already full, already centered. He doesn't need to be taught how to be a man. He is one, not by theory, but by trial, by choice, by scars. And that energy, it's rare, because this world is designed to castrate men psychologically, to make them doubt their instincts, to strip them of their edge, to drown them in guilt for their natural drive. You've seen it, men apologizing for being direct, men ashamed of wanting more, men numbing their power with porn, weed, politics, or approval, anything to avoid becoming the kind of man who could make his own rules. But the attractive man, he knows the cost of that sedation. He's been there, and he swore never again. He saw that being passive doesn't keep you safe. It just makes you forgettable. And so he sharpened. He studied. He failed and bled and walked through fire alone. Until eventually something changed. He stopped chasing. He stopped over-explaining. He stopped laughing at jokes he didn't find funny. Stopped texting back to prove his worth. Stopped giving himself away for people who didn't earn him. And in that stillness, power returned to him. He walked slower, spoke less. And when he did speak, people leaned in because they could feel the difference. He wasn't performing. He wasn't selling. He wasn't asking to be liked. He was simply there, rooted, solid, free. And that kind of man, you don't meet many of them. Because becoming that man requires pain, the kind of pain most people run from. But the attractive man runs through it, not because he enjoys suffering, but because he knows on the other side of that fire is sovereignty, the ability to look in the mirror and know you are the one who forged this version of yourself. No one gave it to you. No one handed you the keys. You built it with sweat, shame, loss, and force of will. And now you move different. Now people respect you, even if they don't know why. Now you intimidate, not by trying, but by being. Because men who carry themselves like they've buried their old self, they have nothing left to fear. So let the world label you however it wants. Let them whisper. Let them misunderstand you. It doesn't matter. You're not in this for validation. You're in it for impact. And here's the secret. Once you no longer need to be seen as attractive, you become unbearably attractive. Not to everyone, but to the few who matter. The people who are also walking the narrow path. The women who are ready for a man who doesn't flinch. The allies who respect strength over charm. The mentors who recognize your discipline. And the enemies who fear what you've become, because they know they can't control you. This is the completion of your transformation. The seventh sign is not something you show. It's something others sense. A man who has mastered himself cannot be manipulated. And that kind of man, he doesn't need to prove anything. Because the moment he walks into the room already knows.